All men are obsessed with ninjas. The debate between pirates versus ninjas is finally settled. We now know our answer. Frankie delivered quite the epic line in this chapter, and it stood out to me. I mean, the panel and the way he said it, it was fucking epic. That was definitely one of the best moments of the chapter. But there is a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of setup, and a lot to talk about when it comes to this chapter. But to quickly cover the comedy elements, let's talk about some of the references that were in this chapter. Now, I don't know if Oda-sensei was actually directly trying to reference this, but I'm assuming he was. One of the easiest ones to notice is the Shadow Clone Jutsu reference, which kind of seems to reference Naruto. But then you have like Dragon Ball reference, and then you have, besides that, a Gintama reference. Now, that one is what shocked me the most, was the Gintama reference. When you saw Zoro talking about the spear get stabbed through a roof by a spear, I'm like, doesn't that, like, happen in Gintama? Like, that fucking happens in Gintama. And I'm like, yo, Oda, or Zoro's, like, confirmed Gintama fan. I mean, damn! I mean, we know Zoro's voice actor from the anime also voice acts in Gintama. It's very clear, and majority of us know this if you actually watch Gintama and you watch One Piece. So seeing that, it's a little funny little gag I noticed in this chapter, and I gotta say, congratulations, Oda, for keeping some good comedy. Even though you had a lot of serious moments throughout this entire chapter, you still get me a good laugh at some of these scenes. Now, let's talk about one of the things that many are going to be talking about when it comes to this chapter, Raizo. So Raizo, he is finally introduced. We finally get to see what he looks like. I mean, his entire character design, who he is, what type of gender has been talked about for a very long time. I've seen it constantly in the comments since Raizo was first mentioned a long time ago. I've seen some say that Raizo might be female. I've seen some say something else like, you know, like different. He might be like a mink. He might be, you know, some form of a fishman. And I mean, there's been many theories I've seen many discuss over the course of many months. And I've seen it constantly. And with this chapter, it finally reveals and answers a lot of our questions we had about Raizo. Who is he? What does he look like? And, you know, what can we expect from him? And for the most part, Oda kind of captured that entire thought process we thought of as soon as we saw Raizo. How lame, how, like, disappointing. And honestly, his character, his design, I expected something really beautiful looking, like, you know, an awesome, epic looking ninja. Now, that does not mean that Raizo isn't a badass, because, I mean, I love the serious talk he had to Usopp and him when he was talking about his life, his love life, how girls treat him, and then all of a sudden, you know, he gets into these antics of, like, what a ninja, he's, like, doing shadow clones, he's doing shurikens and stuff like that. Very funny stuff, but I gotta say, when it comes to the design of Raizo, it's Oda style. It's definitely the style Oda would do. And I can completely see how Oda would do something like that. So I'm not disappointed whatsoever when it comes to Raizo. Now, however, there is a couple of things that were rather surprising when it comes to this chapter, and that was Momo. Now, we know Momo has been a mystery for a while now, because we know Doffy was kind of going after Momo, like he was someone that was wanting to be captured, and he was very, very important. And now seeing this chapter reveals that Momo is actually the son of the Lord of the Wano Kingdom. And you're like, oh my god, when you see this, because Momo has been traveling with him. He's a fucking young lord. He's the son. And then, on top of that, we get to see a glyph in this. A red one. A freaking red one. So, incoming Void Century information. Because let's back up a little bit, and let's look at how this arc started. How this little arc started. It started with us finding out that this country has been untouched since the Void Century. It's been untouched. Zou has been walking around, and it's been untouched. That was one of the main core subjects at the beginning of this arc. That was emphasized. That this was an untouched kingdom. Still living kind of in the old ages. History yet to be tampered with. And so with this glyph, this different colored one, it's obviously going to give a lot more different information. Most likely not to do with weapons, but most likely with history or something very, very, very important. Something that hasn't been tampered with at all. And here's the thing. There was quite a few little things going on in this chapter that were very subtle and many could have missed. And I want to point them out. For one, there was a dialogue between the Neko and Inu. They were both talking with each other, and you had it to where Momo was hearing a voice. He's like, I hear that and all that. And Inu and Neko, they were talking like, oh, that man was like that as well. And they look at each other, and then it's kind of brushed aside. And when you read this panel, the first thing you think of is Raizo. Oh, they're, you know, the Momo's hearing Raizo through the well tree. That's exactly what he's hearing. But that doesn't really make a lick of sense, because the way they said that, with how that man heard it too, and they didn't say Jack. They didn't emphasize Jack or someone else. Like, they didn't emphasize anyone. It makes you assume that it is Gold Roger. Now, we know Gold Roger, you know, with the glyphs and stuff. We know his connection with all that, and we know he's traveled a lot. And with Gold Roger, I feel like that's the man they're talking about. When, you know, Neko and Inu are talking, and that man heard it too. It reminds me of what happened with Luffy at the Fishman Island arc. You remember when Luffy heard the Sea Kings? You heard them talk? That's exactly what it looks like to me. That's what's going on here. For instance, Momo is hearing voices. The main question is, what is he hearing? What is Momo hearing? So that's some very, very subtle foreshadowing. I mean, it's not subtle, but it is, because right after that, you could assume that it might be Raizo they're talking about, which it's not, because it doesn't make a lick of sense when you actually factor in all these points together. So, what? What is Momo hearing, and what is Gold Roger hearing? Like, what did he hear as well? Now, besides that, let's get into a couple other things to talk about. For one, let's talk about how freaking crusty Momo is. Oh my god. This freaking boy. We know his past with Nami. He snuggles in between her cleavage and all that. We've seen this constantly, okay? But this little ass, he straight up, he looks at Kinemon and all that, and he smiles like a devil, and he's between Nami's cleavage, smiling, and then all of a sudden, Nami finds out, you know, that, you know, Momo is the son of the king of the Wano, or the emperor, and because of this, she's like, oh, is your family wealthy? It's very wealthy, right? And you know what Nami's thinking, she's wanting that money. So, just to see how Nami's doing that, I laughed, but that little freaking ass Momo, fuck you, Momo, fuck you, just seriously, that's fucked up. So, yeah, I got a good laugh from that. Standard Oda comedy using Momo. He's going to be, Momo is probably going to be very important. I could see him being someone else that kind of could be similar to giving Luffy allies in the future. Like, you know, building an army. Like, you know, Wano Kingdom, samurais and ninjas and stuff will pop up to help Luffy when, you know, the Great War happens probably at the end of the series. I could see something like that happening, especially with these connections Luffy's been making in recent arcs. So, yeah, I mean, the chapter gives a lot of information. I mean, the Raizo stuff, too. I mean, that was kind of crazy. I mean, finding out, you know, Raizo is, you know, the way he looks and, you know, what he can do. And then also seeing, you know, some epic lines and references, along with, you know, finding out some subtle hints about, you know, this, you know, person that could hear something, and Momo could hear something too. And then seeing, you know, how this glyph is red. It's a completely different color from the normal glyphs we've seen. It gives us many questions right now, like, okay, what is going on here? What does this have to give us? And what information are we going to find out? And how long is Oda going to make us wait until we get this information? Because if you know Oda, we all know Oda by now, when it comes to stuff like this, something that fucking crucial, he probably won't reveal it to another, like, 10 to 15 chapters. Or even, God, sometimes Oda could do something like 100 chapters later. I mean, he's done this type of shit before. So, I mean, and before we have to wait a very long time just to get the information about that red glyph. Now, there is one thing else I need to cover, and that is Jack is alive. Jack is, in fact, confirmed to be alive. He is not dead. Jack is alive. So, with that, we know Jack didn't just suicide himself to try to save Doffy. He is slightly hurt, but for the most part, he is fine. And it seems like, whatever it is, he's not really freaking out that much. So, maybe whatever he did was pretty good, and he accomplished whatever he was trying to set out to do. Maybe he didn't save Doffy, but he's still trying to, you know, do something. We don't really know exactly why. He seems kind of chillax. He's looking at the newspaper and all that. It seems like everything's going under control. So I'm a little bit weirded out by that. That definitely has some form of meaning. And also, since he's reading the news, that means he probably saw some stuff about what happened to, you know, the different countries and stuff. He probably knows what's going on with the Straw Hats, so forth, and he might eventually make his way back to Zou. So there is a possibility that Jack could come back to Zou and then fuck with the Mink tribe once again. We'll see where that goes as well. So yeah, overall chapter, fucking wonderful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We got a color page as well about, you know, One Piece film Gold. Cannot wait for that movie. Cannot wait to review it. Cannot wait to see it, because usually when it comes to One Piece films, they're fucking 10 out of 10. They're usually 10 out of 10. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please be safe. Chibi out.